Good morning. Oh, try that again, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay then. Good morning, church. I'm Reverend Barbara Gaydon, and I am the lead minister at Eliot Chapel, delighted to serve you and serve this community. I welcome you to worship. Whether you are here at our outdoor service or watching the service from home, we are together. We are one community. Just a few reminders for those of us who are in person here. Keep things safe for everybody. We all wear a mask for all the time that we're here together. It needs to be pulled up over your nose and under your chin, and if you find your mask slipping or you forgot your mask or something, there's plenty more at the greeters table. We've even got kids' sizes. You need to sign in at the greeters table so that we can do contact tracing if necessary. And you will find bathrooms through the doors behind me. Go through Adams Hall, turn left down the hallway toward the sanctuary. If you're here visiting us for the first time, a special welcome to you. I'm so glad you chose to be with us today. I hope you feel warmly welcomed and that our message speaks to you and that we will see you again. If you're here in person, please fill out a guest card on the way in or perhaps on the way out so we can stay in touch with you. And if you're at home, drop us a line at welcome@eliotchapel.org to let us know you're here. This is a liberal religious community of spiritual seekers. We welcome you in the fullness of your age, race, ethnicity, gender expression, sexual orientation, and religious background. Our faith is not lived in creeds, but in deeds, in how well we live up to our promise of welcome. Our core values are freedom, reason, respect, and love. Our opening words are by Andrew Pakula. Come into this circle of community. Come into this sacred space. Be not tentative, but bring your whole self. Bring the joy that makes your heart sing. Bring your kindness and your compassion. Bring also your sorrow and your pain. Bring your brokenness and your disappointments. Spirit of love and mystery, help us to recognize this spark of the divine that resides within each of us. May we know the joy of wholeness. May we know the joy of being together. Come, let us worship. We'll worship or we'll light our chalice. It's the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Down the hatches so nothing blows away. Our story today is an old one. There once was a woman who dreamt that she met an angel. The angel offered to show her both heaven and hell. And the angel led her to a room with a big group of people who were seated around a very large table. There was a big pot of stew in the middle of the people that smelled absolutely delicious. It was the first thing you noticed when you walked into the room. But the people around the table were looking rather thin and sad. They clutched their stomachs and moaned from hunger. Can you try that? And she was about to ask why when the angel showed her the spoons that they had to eat with. They looked like this. And she said, they were such long spoons that when they tried to dip them into the pot and feed themselves, you could see they just couldn't do it. And the stew went everywhere. It went flying everywhere, and they were all hungry all the time. This, said the angel. That, said the angel, is hell. That is hell. Then those doors closed and the angel whisked her away to another room. It looked a lot like the first room. There were people that were sitting around a large table. There were delicious smells in the air. There was a big pot of stew. But these people were well fed. Some of them were even a little bit plump, and that was okay because there was no fat shaming in that place. There were no unrealistic standards of beauty. And this time, these people were laughing and talking with each other. What was different, she wondered. She even saw the same large spoons that the other people had. What was different was that these people had learned how to feed one another. They dipped them into the pot, and instead of trying to feed themselves, they reached across and fed the person across from them. And that way, they all could eat. This, said the angel, is heaven. And the woman woke up, and she knew what she needed to do. As good a time for a prayer as any. I invite you now to a time of prayer and meditation. If you wish to, you may plant your feet flat on the floor, straighten your spine, and close your eyes and follow your breath. And hear these words from Richard Fuchs. For the sun and the dawn which we did not create, for the moon and the evening which we did not make, for food which we plant but cannot grow, for friends and loved ones we have not earned, cannot borrow, for this gathered community which welcomes us as we are, from wherever we have come, for all our free churches that keep us human and encourage us in our quest for beauty, truth, and love, for all things which come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love and friendship, we lift up our hearts in thanks this day. Let us dwell together now in a moment of silence. Amen. Every month at our Eliot Chapel, we share our offering with a local organization that shares our values and helps us to further our mission. In October, we're sharing our offering with Missouri Faith Voices. Missouri Faith Voices is a movement of many people of different religious backgrounds and races committed to dismantling white supremacy and making racial equity a reality. If you're joining us online, you can contribute by mailing a check with shared plate in the memo line, and our address is on the website, or you can text Eliot shared plate, the amount you want to give, to 73256, 73256. Let us open our hearts and be a generous people. Will the ushers please come forward? May this church be worthy of your gifts. Sometimes you just have to improvise. It's true. In the church that I started out ministry with in Ludington, Michigan, it's a little church, brand new, just started. And every week, just like we're doing right here, every week, that church had to set up. They had to actually build the church themselves. They didn't own a building, and they were renting from a town hall, an old rental hall that everybody else rented from. And every week they kept their belongings in a trailer, called themselves the Church in the Trailer. And they carried all their church stuff, their hymnals, the podium, the speakers, the orders of service, everything that you need for church they had in this little trailer. And they would come one by one down down through the parking lot and bringing things inside. And it was getting a little bit old. It was a hard time to be a church and just kind of relax and, kind of focus on just kind of on yourself and what you needed. It's helpful sometimes to hear stories about when you need to improvise. The allegory of the long spoons has been around for a very long time. People say that the author is Rabbi Chaim of Romshishak in 19th century Lithuania. But people have told this story in many times, many places, many cultures, many religions, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Jewish settings. There's a Chinese version with rice and very long chopsticks. Wikipedia, which is usually a place I go more for information than for poetry, calls the allegory of the long spoons an illustration for sermons and a story for lonely people. And we are all lonely people. Everyone hears this story as somebody from a certain time and place. So as an American, as somebody who's taught to be independent and practical, I hear the story, and maybe you did too. I couldn't help thinking, well, why don't they just chop the spoons in half? I mean, I made ours from $1 yardstick from Lowe's and aluminum foil. They could have just snapped pretty easily. Or since it's baseball season, why don't they just, choke up on it a little bit? Feed themselves. Well, the answer is we've tried that. We've tried that. And it doesn't work. We can give everybody a fine working spoon, and there are still going to be hungry people. In our country, we talk about it as the American dream. My friend and colleague Lisa Bovey-Kemper talks about the fallacy or the lie of the American dream. The lie, she says, that tells us not only are we expected to succeed alone, but that every person has the innate ability to do that. Not only should we be able to succeed alone, everyone has this innate ability to do so. This lie, she says, is the single largest contributor to the fractured and declining state of our nation and our churches today. We have suffered so much from the expectations of rugged individualism during the pandemic. And then we get handed a miracle, a scientific miracle, mind you, but no less a miracle of a vaccine that came out months, maybe years earlier than it should have. And instead of seeing it as our collective salvation, as my friend and colleague Gretchen Haley writes, people saw it as a way to assert their individualism, their individual choice, their freedom. And it's like we're watching people sitting around a big table with their big spoons and a big pot of delicious stew and starving. We Unitarian Universalists are not that different. We are well trained as individualists. Our founding saint of Unitarianism, or one of them, Ralph Waldo Emerson, taught us that no law can be sacred to me but that of my nature, Emerson proclaimed. He said, trust thyself, every heart beats to that iron string. He said, men are less together than they are alone. Individualism like this, it sounds kind of wonderful in the beginning when you arrive at a UU church for the first time, especially if we grew up in communities where there was no freedom to be your full self. But it only tastes good at the beginning. It only nourishes us at the very beginning. We find that it doesn't sustain us that alone very long. And it doesn't help us to be a community, to struggle through the challenges and all of the things you have to do when you have to improvise. We need other things to do that. And challenges come along in many forms. So this church that I was serving, this church that operated out of a trailer, and they had the hymnals coming down the line, and they set up church every week. One week, we arrived to set up, and we found that the hall we were renting, the hall was already opened, and we were horrified by what we saw when we looked in. All I can tell you is that it must have been one humdinger of a wedding reception. There were bottles and cigarette butts on the floor. My personal favorite was a pair of pantyhose wadded up suggestively in the corner. And the bride's family had arrived a few minutes before us, and they were just starting to clean up. And then we show up in our Sunday best. I was so mad. I wanted to go up to them and just tell them off. I wanted to say how rude and inconsiderate those people were. When a man in the congregation held out his hand and stopped me. He stopped me and he said he had spoken to the family, and he said they didn't know, Barbara, they didn't know that we were going to be here. I was so grateful for that hand. Well, then what happened? Well, our congregation pitched in to help, sweeping and tidying up. Could have used a good mopping too, if you asked me. There was a slight boozy smell in the air still, but that was okay. We had church, and however each of us felt at that moment, whether or not we should have to sweep up after a big stinky party just to have church, we still did it. Now, we called the town hall people the next day, mind you, but before that, we got this chance, we got this opportunity to practice compassion and kindness and not entitlement. At that moment, this congregation was clear on who and what they wanted to be. And what they wanted to be was a we, rather than just a collection of me's. Churches get different opportunities to grow into that we sense, to grow into being a church based on their mission, a community rather than a collection of individuals with competing interests. Eliot Chapel has done this many times. When you voted to become a welcoming congregation to LGBTQ people, when you voted to become a sanctuary church, welcoming undocumented people, agreeing to shelter them against the selfish cruelty of our government. When we pooled our money and bought this land right here in hopes of building something together. Now, if you ask different individuals in our church, different people, about each of these decisions, you might get different answers about what they thought of that, whether or not they agreed, whether or not they were comfortable. But if you keep talking to them, you will hear something else. You will hear a deeper yes to this being in community, to being part of a community that does things that might not please everyone or make everyone comfortable, but will help us move forward and grow together. And right now, we're doing some things that we might not have chosen individually if it was up to us. Make reservations for church? Whoever thought Unitarians would do that? And who even wanted to learn how to do meetings on Zoom? I am so grateful to everybody who learned and worked through their discomfort and all of the things that we've had to do at this time. And in the weeks to come, we're going to need to make some more decisions. We're going to wrap this up at the end of November, and we're going to have to make a decision about what we'll do as a community starting in December. And it gets cold and we can't meet outside. We'll have conversations about this. And we're going to need to, throughout this, we're going to need to not only decide what we're going to do, but we're going to have to decide how we're going to be with one another. And it won't be easy. 9 or 10 years ago, Eliot Chapel was going through another big transition. It was a couple of years before I arrived, and some of it was painful. And you all wrote a covenant about what you wanted the church to be, how you wanted to be together. A time when we have to make difficult choices, people are going to want different things. And I thought that we might be supported at this time by the congregation's words back then. Our covenant is still with us, it's on our website, but we pay almost no attention to it. So here are some of the words. It's very long, we're going to just do a small version of it, or hear a small version. Here is some of what you said, plus the words that come before our 7 principles. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. We promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends. I think we need some of this now. And I'm proposing that we start to hear these words and speak them, put them in front of ourselves right now, to remind ourselves every week. We who have lived through a plague and need to keep each other fed and alive in the here and now. We need these words. We need each other. And we need to create this heaven on earth. Amen. And now, for the first time in 18 months, singing.
To that land, come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land, come and go with me to that land, come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom, come and get freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm
Hey, Eliot Chapel, coming back. Now may the love which overcomes all differences, which puts to flight all fears, which heals all wounds, be in us and among us now and always. Amen. Go in peace.